Live. And welcome to RealAg Live, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. We're going to have a really fun discussion today on technology and things that, the opportunities you have on your farm to use some of the data from this year and use it to work on next year. And it's hard to believe we're already at the end of October and we're talking about the 21 crop. It is so hard to believe. Okay, on today's show, we're going to have a lot of fun discussions. Like I said, if you want to participate in today's discussion, all you have to do is comment in the comment box, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Or if you're on Twitch as well, you could comment there as well. And we welcome all comments and questions. We'll try to get to as many of them as possible. Let's bring in today's guest. It is Andria Karstens of Climate FieldView. Andria, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks a lot for joining us here today. So, Andrea, give us a little bit of your background. How long have you been at Climate FieldView?
For sure. I've been at FieldView a couple of years now. Prior to FieldView, started out as a DeKalb summer student, and they must have had a hard time keeping me away. I made it through the merger and actually had a pretty cool start to my journey with FieldView. I started by moving to Ontario for a year, so big change. From Western Canada, where I've grown up. So I spent a year in Ontario, which was really cool. Totally different experience, farming out there, agriculture, all of that. But I guess the great thing about that, we all know that ag has great people. So it was a lot of fun. They made it a great experience for me.
Yeah, there is a lot of differences, but there's also a lot of similarities. And I think, sometimes when people in the West look east, they make some assumptions and vice versa. The reality is everybody's farming and everybody loves the industry. It's done. There's just some of those different, obviously the crops can be different, corn and beans in the east and wheat, canola, and pulse crops mainly in the West, but a lot of things are still the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's things we can learn from understanding both sides as well, too, different ideas and things going on. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then, of course, the West called me back home. So I've been in Saskatoon here for the past year and a half. I actually grew up on a grain farm in a small town, Wilkie, west of Saskatoon. So not too far from home, but happy to be back in Sask, sure.
Nice stuff. Okay, question here before we get to some of the technology stuff. Good question from Pinto McBean, watching on Twitch. What was the coolest thing you saw out east?
I don't know if this is going to sound super cool, but I remember the first time I drove. So I got there late August. So corn was already up. There's lots of corn going through. And I was going to a customer event. And it actually was at a farm just outside of London, which is where I lived when I was out there. And I remember just like the walls of corn. It was kind of more a back road, so there wasn't a lot of ditch. And just like driving through these walls. And I was like, whoa, this must be what Ontario is.
Yeah, and I always notice that if the GPS says it's going to take 50 minutes to get somewhere, it's going to take 50 minutes to get somewhere. I think a lot of times out west, it's like, oh, Google says 50 minutes, but I know that I can outrun it. I know I can get there in 40. That is not so much the case out there in Eastern Canada. Comment here from Lara. She says, Wilkie, you're from a stone's throw away from where I grew up, east of Landis. So there you go.
You betcha.
Okay.
Great place to be from.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about some of the things that Climate FieldView has been working on in terms of data capture and how that data capture, of course, leads to the planning stages of where we are currently right now in the crop cycle.
Yeah, for sure. So everyone that's been using FieldView, hopefully we've got some of our, especially in Western Canada, harvest has pretty much been wrapped up for a while here. Eastern Canada, I know we're still going. So getting that data into FieldView from our combines and those yield monitors is definitely the first step in what we can look at for 2021. I like to think of data as the starting point. So if we're not collecting that data, we don't really have anywhere to go from. And we don't really know what's going on if we don't have a starting point. Anytime we want to improve something, we kind of have to figure out what's going well, what's going bad, and then kind of set our goals from there. So definitely working on getting that in there so we can start to think about where we're going for next year.
And so a big part of next year is the seed decision. What are some of the tools available in FieldView that help you out with that decision? Because listen, everything starts with the seed. It's critically important.
Yeah, absolutely. So within FieldView, there are a few seed-specific tools, or I guess not necessarily seed-specific, but can be used for seed decisions for sure. So there's our yield analysis tools and our region report tools. So it kind of depends if we want to look at field-to-field comparison or subfield comparison. We're kind of looking at our whole farm holistically. How did a certain hybrid or variety do across the farm? That's where I'd probably want to go into the yield analysis tool. It breaks it up, makes it really easy to see what hybrids were in what fields, what they yielded, and that sort of thing. And then as we get further into a subfield analysis, that's where I go into those region reports. So maybe you had 2 hybrids across the field, but you want to exclude your headlands, or you want to see maybe the different elevations of where those were planted. What's going on in each of those areas. The subfield, I think, becomes pretty important if we're doing any of the variable rate pieces. Just to kind of nail down exactly what's going on in each section of the field.
And does this apply to any company's genetics, or is it specific to only ones that are associated with the mother company with climate, or how does that work?
Yeah, for sure. No, we don't want to leave anyone out, that's for sure. It kind of depends how you have it labeled. So basically the better information we have, the better information that you can get out of it. So if you have all of your hybrids and varieties labeled correctly, then it can easily sort them into those different categories, regardless of where those seeds came from, what company, where you bought them. So it's just going to sort them basically by the title. It just recognizes that this is the same title as this one, puts it in the bucket, and then gives you the yield for that hybrid or variety. So play nice with everybody.
So does it only use your data, or does it kind of aggregate? If there's, say, 5 farmers in sort of your local geography that are using Climate FieldView, does it allow you to compare against others, or is it specific to your data, your farm?
Your data, your farm. No one else can see it unless you have given them permission to see it. So it is your data. You're the only one who's able to see it. But let's say you and a few of your farmer friends all have FieldView. You could all be sharing your results, your yield results with each other if you wanted, just to kind of get, maybe it's like the neighborhood. I know there's a couple growers that I've talked to in the past where they kind of each take on a couple of different trials and then share their data with each other that way, so that they can see how the trials work. And instead of all having to do 10 trials, they split it out, do a couple, and share their data with others, which I think is kind of neat. And then along with the sharing piece, maybe you have that agronomist that you're working with, and you want them to be able to see how those hybrids yielded, maybe help you make some of your seeding decisions, what hybrids, what varieties, then they would be able to see that. But it all is under your control. So you go onto the web and you can choose who you want to share with and what you want to share with them.
Well, it definitely allows you to do kind of some large scale on-farm trialing. Like if you've heard about this other variety that you haven't been using on your farm and you want to give it a shot and have some data to compare it against inside the year, it makes it really easy to do some of that on-farm research.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that every time there's a new seed or a new fungicide from the different companies, they're giving us product to try. We want to identify how that's going to perform on our farm. We know they're creating data for us as well, but sometimes it's just nice to know exactly in your field and your conditions what that looks like. Nice thing is my dad and my brother still farm out at Wilkie, so I get to play with this firsthand with them. They had a few new hybrids that they were trying this year. So we just actually finished walking through some of that and identifying how those performed on their farm. So yeah, it does make it really easy, and it is nice that we can get down to just those certain areas in the field.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, question here from Pinto McBean watching on Twitch. How does Climate compare to some of the other competitors on the market?
Yeah, great question. I'd say it kind of depends what you're looking for. So with FieldView, we're all about kind of you choose who you want to do what. You can share your data with whoever. You can, if your retail is the one that helps you create your prescriptions and maybe you buy seed from your other retail, you can sort of manage that. I know there's other competitors in the market that sort of own all of that and do your soil samples for you and create your prescriptions for you. FieldView lets you go to whoever you want to be those trusted advisors to do those different things for you. So it kind of depends what you're looking for on your farm. FieldView has the FieldView Drive, which makes the in-field data collection really easy, and we do have a really nice visual on the cab with the iPad. So it depends if that's of importance to you. So kind of just, if you do have more specific questions, be happy to talk about it offline for sure. But I'll say it's sort of different for each farm and what your specific needs on your farm are.
Okay, a question I had here was, okay, so we can go back to say, look at what happened in the 20 crop year, but can we aggregate, once I've been on the system for numerous years, can I aggregate some of that data and say, hey, over the last 5 years in this field, we've had cereals in 3 of them. How have the varieties performed? Can I aggregate some of that data over multiple years?
I wouldn't say aggregate over multiple years, but it's all there to be compared side by side. There are a few more reports in the web that we can maybe pull together, and in the app we can do some sending and printing of reports, and we can bring all of it into an Excel sheet if we want. So that's something, if you have more questions on that, message me personally on Twitter after, and we can walk through that if you're interested. So that would probably be my best recommendation, is to pull some of that into an Excel sheet and then go year over year, so you can access all of that information from all the previous years, which is kind of nice. It's a really good way to store it. So you can go back, whether it's imagery or even just to remember what we see in certain fields year previous. We can go back as much information as you have. So if you uploaded all of your yield maps since 1999, I don't even know if field monitors exist. We can go check those out.
Good stuff. Okay, in terms of planning ahead for the next season, let's cover that, because this is, I think, highly on the minds of a lot of growers, not just in Western Canada where harvest is pretty much wrapped up, but also, there's a lot of farmers in Eastern Canada that are riding a combine right now, and windshield time is a good time to think about next year as well. So what are the things we can do from the FieldView platform to work on some of that planning for next year?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is getting that information in there. So do we have complete data? So when I'm thinking about, what did we see this year? What did we spray this year? What did we harvest this year? So that's kind of the first thing that I think about, is that information even there to kind of take an inventory of what I'm even looking to improve for next year. So if I do have that, then what products did I maybe try that were new this year? Or did I do anything different that I want to evaluate and make changes for next year? So thinking about maybe I tried a new fungicide, going back to some of those tools that I had mentioned, region reports, to go back and compare which fungicide did better, or did I add a micronutrient in 2020? Did that pay off for me? Starting to think about some of those things that I did, so that I can decide on what steps I want to take them for next year. So do I want to test that thing another year to understand a number of years of information on my own farm, or even rotationally, where do I need to be? And then I think another big thing when it comes to planning is probably looking at that soil data. So where does that fit in with whatever else is going on my farm? So just, I think the first piece of the planning is taking an inventory of what we have and starting to do an analysis on that and deciding what we want to change for next year. So within field.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's tougher when you can't see the other person starting and stopping talking. Hey? So I guess the nice thing with the FieldView is being able to visualize all those pieces in FieldView. So you don't have to be pulling this piece of information from over here and that piece of information from over there and this spreadsheet and that notebook that someone probably forgot to write in or lost sometime during the harvest scramble. I guess that's the nice piece about getting it all in that one spot.
Come on. Post-it notes and loose pieces of paper blowing around the truck cab. Like that is, and then trying to find that piece of paper, those are like moments that who would give that up? It's like I put that piece of paper here somewhere. Where is it? We've all been there. So I agree with you. It's nice to get it all in one spot. It's all organized, and the fact that you can share some of that with other people that you're working with, whether that's inside the farm or, like you mentioned, consultants or agronomists outside of your operation, that are helping in the planning process.
Yeah, I think you make a good point bringing it up again. And I I don't know if it's just me or something, but lean on the experts. There's people in your life that know more about you than some stuff, or maybe that's just me. I don't know. But if you're someone who knows more about something than me, I want their opinion if they can help me, if it's to be more profitable. So yeah, I think that's why it's a great thing to be able to share that information with those folks.
Yeah, good stuff. You've got something in FieldView called a seed script. What is that?
Yeah, for sure. I would like to call it a smart tool in the sense that it's going to recommend a population prescription. This is only in corn, so sorry for you Western Canadian folks, might not be as applicable. But it is a tool in corn, and it recommends a population based on historical information. So things like yield maps, those are taken in, and satellite imagery. And the way we're able to recommend that population is based on a number of years of Bayer research data. So all back from breeding, all of that information, that population data is brought into the database. And of course, your geography, because we're choosing the field we want to do that in. We also enter in the price of seed, what you hope to get for the corn, and your yield goals. So kind of just to understand a bit more for what you're looking to do. And then we spit out a population recommendation based on that information. So it's kind of just a helpful tool. And a lot of times it's not even a ton more seed, just redistributing that seed into the better parts of the field and where it makes sense based on some of that historical yield and imagery data.
Wow. Well, that could be a pretty powerful tool.
Yeah, super neat. The nice thing is too, you can play with it. So it'll give you a recommendation. And then if you're like, well, I know I want to use more fertilizer this year than last year, so you can kind of bump up that yield goal too. And if you want to play with the number of zones, depending on the capabilities of your planter, maybe it works better with 4 zones instead of 7, and that sort of thing. And then same thing with this sort of tool. If you have your account shared with your agronomist, they can also see this. So especially now, we know we're not doing a ton of stuff in person, not sure how long this is going to last. They can also see that and play around with it and give you some recommendations, that as well.
So is it available in all crop types, or for sure corn and beans, but what about canola, wheat? How far does it go?
Actually, only corn right now.
Okay.
So there's a lot of work being done in the U.S. to get it to a soybean place, but currently only corn. And then as far as other crops in Western Canada, not quite.
Everything always starts with corn. Those corn growers always get everything first.
I know, but growing corn is pretty cool. I did learn that.
And there's 90 million acres of it too in one country. So it makes sense where it all kind of starts. So, but it'll be coming before you know it. Absolutely, interesting stuff. Those kind of tools are really, really cool, because especially if it's easy to play with it and play with those variables, because we know that every year is different, right? And so the more information you have from prior years, to apply that to the coming year's variables that you at least know about, you're increasing the probability you're making good decisions. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The more information you can get in there, absolutely, the better. It makes things.
Marvin says corn is king. Marvin, you're correct. Yeah, you're right on that one. Question from. What's that?
Western Canada, anyways.
Yeah, right. Question here from Lara. How long does it take to develop a tool like the corn population tool?
That's a great question. Definitely a number of years to just build out the database. Although even when we started, we did kind of go back into that research database that was already developed. I don't have an exact answer. I know that it's been around for a few years already. Not till, I'm guessing a few years, same sort of thing. We would have had to start with one iteration of that model and then continue to build it out as we move forward. But I can tell you something kind of cool to follow up with the corn script.
Yeah.
In the US, they're actually beta testing one step further. So I think it just kind of speaks to even collecting that data and what we can do with digital ag is that they're at a point where they will even recommend a hybrid, which I think is super neat. So you give them all that information and they'll say, this hybrid, this hybrid, this hybrid are all good options for your farm. This hybrid and this hybrid, don't plant them. Basically, you're going to lose money based on the information that we have. So I think that's
Really?
super cool as well.
Wow.
As we move into the future. Yeah.
That's taking it even a step further. That's pretty cool. So with all of this, and you're trying to combine the the information from the data you've collected plus kind of what you know in your gut or you know in your head, and you're trying to add it all together. I think the key still is for a lot of farmers is the user experience and making sure that any software platform that's in the cab or in the office, it's highly easy to use. I would imagine there's a lot of time spent trying to figure out how do we make this so it's easy for the user to do while they're in some of the conditions, like standing in a field or in a dusty cab, stuff like that.
Yeah, 100% agree. If it isn't easy to use, it probably won't get used because we all know when we need to combine, we need to spray, we need to seed or plant, I guess. We need to do those things right now. So if it isn't something that's easy to use, it's not going to happen. And I think with FieldView, we've done a pretty good job of simplifying that. Within the cab app on the iPad, hopefully made things as intuitive as possible. I've gotten lots of feedback that things are really easy to use. I know even a quote from a grower, even the technology challenged on my farm had no problem using it this year. So it's always cool to hear things like that.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. Good question here from, we had the Saskatchewan election yesterday, and I had hosted a Saskatchewan election forum dedicated to agriculture. And one of the topics that we focused on, and I think farmers across the country are focused on this topic, it is rural broadband. So how dependent am I as a farmer on high-speed connectivity in trying to use Climate FieldView?
Oh, internet on the farm, what a topic. The nice thing about FieldView is kind of once you're set up, and a lot of that setup can be done in the house, in the shop, where we know the internet isn't great, but it's often better than some of those areas with no service in our fields. But once we're set up and ready to go, we can actually still connect the data without using internet at all. So as long as our iPad is set up, the drive that we're using to collect the data from the equipment uses Bluetooth to send that information to the iPad. And then it will store on the iPad until we get to either where we have service or in the house, or maybe we need to go into town to use the Wi-Fi, because I know the rural internet is questionable, but it is nice that we don't actually rely on it once we're kind of ready to go.
Got a great question here from Ryan. Are you ready? Are you able to compare yield maps to downforce mapping, or even something like the Smart Firmer from Precision Planting that is collecting real-time in-furrow data while planting? Focusing on seed genetics is great, but what about all the other data we're collecting from our equipment? How can we tie all of this together? This is a specific example to corn, but I think, the idea of how do we tie all this together, all of these different sources, how do we do that?
Someone asked what the coolest thing I've seen when I was in Ontario was at the start, and the Smart Firmer definitely has to hit that list. The information that those little gadgets can pick up is super, super cool. So great question. So just a little bit of, I guess, history lesson on FieldView is that some of the software so the cab app was originally from Precision Planting. So that means that a lot of the technology within there was recorded in FieldView. So They use the iPad as a visualization tool. They now have moved on and they have different monitors, but that was a part of visualizing precision planting's information was through the CAB app. So we actually do have those maps, such as downforce is the one mentioned specifically here. You can visualize that in your CAB app. So you can split screen and put that side by side with your yield map. There's a number of other layers from precision planting that are stored in the CAB app as well and online. So it is super cool that information comes over, because totally agree. There's a ton of awesome data that's collected from there and through precision planting. If you can't see some of those layers in your CAB app, they might be hidden. So would be happy to walk you through that too. If you have specific questions, you can tweet our FieldView Canada or my Twitter, and I can walk you through how to find that. So yeah, I definitely agree. It all can be tied together in the app, which is cool.
Yeah, well, the more we can do that, the better, right? Because that's where we're absolutely gaining the most traction. That's where we're getting the biggest advantage out of all of this, because it's a lot of work to try to incorporate, data-based decision making into your farm, and everybody's at different levels and different steps. But if we're able to put all this stuff and crunch it together and have information come out, because then we're getting more variables into the equation, so to speak. I just think that's where we're really winning, and we're making better decisions.
Yeah, totally agree. And we have all that information, we might as well use it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. So what was that? Say that again. We have all the information.
We might as well use it.
We might as well use it. I like it for sure. Hey, Andria, we're out of time. That was awesome. That was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you joining us here today on RealAg Live.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And if there's any other questions, my Twitter is Karstens. So please reach out if you do have any specific questions.
Awesome stuff. We've been talking to Andria Karstens from Climate FieldView. Find her on Twitter. What was that handle again?
Karstens.
Karstens. Awesome stuff. Hey, today on RealAg Radio, we got a great show for you today. Lots of fun. We're talking to Brendan Turner of Farm Lead about the markets. We're also going to hear from Stuart Cullum, president of Olds College. And tomorrow we've got Carrie Tate from the Globe and Mail on RealAg Radio, as well as JP Gervais. Tomorrow here on RealAg Live, we are going to have a really good show. We're going to talk to Alberta farmer John Kowalchuk. He'll be here. We're going to talk about his farm, how things have gone this year, what are some of his trials, tribulations, opportunities, and also some of the fun stuff he does on social media as well. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Live, and we'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.